Hey, my name is Travis Britton, head of content at Buzzsprout, and in this software tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to use Hindenburg Journalist to record, edit, and export your podcast episodes. So what makes Hindenburg stand out among the sea of audio editing options that you have? Well, most of the comparable softwares, GarageBand, Audacity, Adobe Audition, Logic Pro, and Reaper, either have a steep learning curve or were primarily created for mixing music. So Hindenburg Journalist and Journalist Pro, they're two softwares, were created for journalists, like it says in the name, and podcasters. So if you're looking for something that's easy to use, that's going to give you all the bells and whistles of a pro-level audio editing software without the complexity of stuff you don't need, then Hindenburg is a fantastic, fantastic choice for podcasters, no matter if you've been podcasting for 2 months or 2 years. It's also available on both Windows and Mac OS, so it's a cross-platform editing software. I've personally found Hindenburg to be extremely user-friendly, and so if you're looking to remove complexity from your workflow without sacrificing the sound and audio quality of your episodes, then I strongly recommend you consider using Hindenburg Journalist to record and edit your podcast episodes. So here on the screen, you can see the Hindenburg window. So when you open the application, this is what you're going to see. And I'm just going to briefly take you on a tour around what all these buttons do. So as we start diving into how to record and edit, everything will make sense. So over here on the left, you can see they have 4 tracks pre-populated for you. Now you can delete these tracks, you can add new tracks, you can rename them. But these are the 4 tracks that you'll get started out with when you open it. Over here, you have the volume button. This is a respective volume for this particular track, though you don't actually need this, and you'll find out in a minute why. And then this right here gives the left and right pan. So if you're recording a stereo track and you want the right side to be louder than the left side, you can do that. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. This little record button is how you arm the track for recording. So when you're getting ready to record in Hindenburg, you would make sure that that is selected for all the tracks you want to record. This M button is to mute this track if you're doing a playback and you just want to listen to particular tracks. The S stands for solo. So if you just want to listen to this track and mute everything else, you'd press the solo button. This button is for effects. I'm going to dive into the effects when we get to the mastering section of this video, so you don't have to worry about that. And then in the drop-down menu, you can apply a profile, learn a profile, and then add or delete tracks. And again, I'm going to explain all this stuff later in the video. Just want to kind of show you around. Up at the top, we have your basic buttons: new, open, save, import, export. So if you have used a software where importing a file is really a big hassle, Hindenburg makes it very easy. It's a bright button that says import right now. Cut, copy, paste, insert, clear, and split. These are your main editing buttons, and they all have keyboard shortcuts that you can use as well. And then you can undo, redo. Any mistakes that you make, you can just hit undo. This is completely non-destructive editing. That means if you make a mistake and delete something you didn't want to, you can undo that delete and get your audio back, which is something that's not true for every audio editor. And then if you have a question about anything in Hindenburg, you can click this help button. It'll open up a browser and you can browse through all the help documentation to help you kind of figure out, okay, this button does this button does that. And then over on the right, you have your clipboard. So the clipboard is here is basically local storage for any audio files that you plan on using. So let's say that you bring in an entire interview file in Hindenburg, but you know you only want like 40% of it. You can actually create selections of that file, drag it into your clipboard, and then you can have easy access to it later. This is also really nice if you have an intro or an outro. You can put those in your clipboard, and when it's time to bring that into your final episode mix, you can do that very easily. So it's a really nice tool for just having all your stuff stored in one place and really just helping you stay organized. Then at the bottom, we have our time controls. So you have play, stop. This record button is for when you're ready to actually record your episode. You can scrub through different files. You can go forwards, you can go backwards, you can skip. You can adjust the playback speed as well, which is nice. You have this nice voice meter and then your time. So that's it. That's what Hindenburg looks like when you open up the application window. So let's do our first recording in Hindenburg. So what we're going to do is we're going to need to identify our microphone, select it as the audio input, and then start recording. So I am running my Rode Procaster through a Rodecaster Pro. I know those names are very similar, but essentially the microphone's going into a mixer and then into my computer. And this would also work if you're using a USB microphone and plugging it directly into your computer. Essentially, all you want to make sure you do is select the right audio input so it doesn't record the microphone that's on your computer. So in this drop-down menu beneath each track, you can select the audio input. So for this first track, I'm going to make that this particular microphone. And so over here, you can have the default, which be your system preference. And then I have the option of either doing a stereo mix of the mixer I'm using or a particular track, which is what I want. So I am currently recording into the third mic slots, the third mic position on my Rodecaster Pro. And so that is position 5. And so I click 5. So now when I start recording, it's going to take this microphone and record it into the first track. Now let's say that somebody else is recording with me and we want to do a multi-track recording. So that's my microphone on the first track and their microphone on a second track, which makes it a lot easier to edit later. You would just go to the same drop-down on the second line, go to Rodecaster Pro multi-channel, and let's say that they're on the first mic input. We would just choose mic 1. And that would be that input. Does that make sense? So that's all you have to do to set your microphone. And again, if you're using like a USB microphone, like a Blue Yeti or an ATR 2100 or a Samsung Q2U, then you would just make sure that you select that microphone as your input before you start recording. Now, before we hit the record button, remember we have to arm each track. We have to tell Hindenburg which tracks we want it to record. So I'm going to go to this tiny record button up here and click that. And so you can automatically see the little voice meter, the little level meter pop up on the side. So I can see that I'm not peaking, that my levels are nice and exactly where I want them. And then if I'm recording with a guest, I would also arm their track so that they could also be recorded at the same time. So once I have those armed, you'll see this record button start flashing at the bottom. That means that Hindenburg is ready to start recording the episode. So now you can see Hindenburg recording my audio. You can see my waveform showing up on line 1 on the first track. And if I had a guest that was speaking, their audio would be showing up here on the second track. And then whenever you're ready to stop the recording, you just go down to the bottom and you hit stop. Now, watch what happens to these tracks once I hit stop. All right? Pay attention, close attention to track 1. All right, did you see what just happened? So Hindenburg, after I stopped recording, they analyzed the audio file and they automatically adjusted the volume level. Did you see that? It went from 0 to +8 decibels. Crazy, right? So what Hindenburg is doing is auto-leveling your audio. So whenever you record your audio in Hindenburg, or if you import an audio file that you've already recorded, or import a music file or anything like that, it will analyze that audio file and automatically level it for you. This is like, thank you. Why did no one else think of this? So again, this is just one of those things that really makes Hindenburg stand out for podcasting applications. Now I'm going to show you how to import audio files into Hindenburg. So maybe you recorded your audio using a mixer or a field recorder like the Zoom H4n Pro, or even your iPhone. You can bring any of those audio files into Hindenburg and start using them for your podcast episode. So what I'm going to do is on this second track, I'm going to import an audio file. So I would just click Imports. I would choose the file I want to bring in and click Open. And then again, Hindenburg does their auto leveling magic. So this audio file that I just imported is at the same level as the audio file in track 1. Just awesome. It's amazing. It's amazing that it does that. Now, when it imported wherever the playhead was. So this playhead, if it had been all the way at the beginning, it would have brought it in there. If it was over here, that's where it would have brought it in. Now, let's say that I don't want to just import a vocal track. I want to import some music. And let's say I want it to start right at a minute on track 3. I would just move my playhead to 1 minute in track 3. I would click import. I would choose the song that I want to bring in, and I would click open. And again, Hindenburg would automatically level the track for you. So now, if we zoom out a little bit, you can see the intro portion of this episode. Maybe this is an interview that you did with somebody, and then this is your intro music. That is how easy it is to import audio files into Hindenburg and then have them leveled so all your audio sounds the same, consistent all the way through your episode. So now we're going to do some basic editing. Once you have your audio files in Hindenburg and you're ready to start chopping them up, how do you actually do that? So the first thing you'll notice when you start highlighting certain tracks is that the cursor actually changes depending on where you are. So if you're in the top half of the track and you click on it, you can actually move stuff left and right, okay? You can also move it up and down, but that is how you click on something. And I'm just holding the mouse and moving it around. If you wanted to select a certain section of the track, then you would just go down to the bottom half of the track, and you can see now it's changed into an I-beam or a cursor. From there, I can click on it, or I can click and drag to make a selection. So now anything I do editing-wise is going to apply directly to this selection that I just made. The other way that you can do that is you can click on it and hit I on your keyboard to set an in point. And then let's say I want it to stop here. I would put my cursor there. I would select it, move the playhead to there, and I would click O on my keyboard, and that makes it the new out point. Now, let's say up here on the first track, I want to actually split this, okay? So when it goes from this track into the interview, I want to make a cut right there. So if I go up here with my cursor and I go to the bottom of the track where the I-beam shows up and I click on it, from there I can either hit this split button or I can use Command B, and that will actually split this track. You have to make sure it's selected, that it's highlighted, that the playhead is where you want it, and you hit Command B. Now, this track has been separated from this track. So that's how easy it is. Another common editing tool that you'll want to use is both cut and clear. And I'll explain what both of those do. So let's say that right here, this section of my interview, I want to cut it out, and I want everything to the right of that to shift over automatically. For that, you would use the cut tool, which is also Command X. So if I do that, then you'll see that it cut that selection, moved everything to the left, and now I have two different tracks, but they're right next to each other. I'll hit undo or Control Z to undo that, and now they're one track again. Now, instead of moving everything to the left, I'm just going to delete that particular segment. So I have it selected still. All I have to do now is, instead of hitting cut, you hit clear or delete or backspace on your keyboard. And that will remove that segment of the audio file and leave everything where it is. So if that's what you're trying to do, you would use the clear tool. My guess is you'll probably use the cut tool more often, which is Command X or Control X if you use a Windows PC. But both options are available for you. Now, one thing that Hindenburg makes very easy is doing volume adjustments. So let's say that this music track is going to be living under my interview as like a music bed. And so I don't want it at full blast. I just want it in the background, kind of providing a mood. So all you have to do is select this track, this music track, and then you'll see these little boxes show up in the different corners, and then also this rectangle here in the middle. So I can click on that, and then from there, drag the volume up and down to exactly where I want it to be. You'll see it stick here at negative 12.6 decibels, which is when Hindenburg did the auto leveling, but you can drag it up and down to set the volume. So let's say that I want it down here. Now, whenever I'm playing this section of my podcast episode, the music won't overpower the audio. Now, let's say that I actually want this music to be at full volume before this particular interview clip and then fade it down to fit underneath it. So it's actually really easy to do that with Hindenburg. So all I would do is select this clip, shift it over to where I want it to be, and then from here, I just make a tiny selection where I want my fade to be. So this is the amount of time here, I'm going to zoom in here. That's the amount of time that I want it to take for the volume to go from full blast to the setting that's going to live under the track. So from here, if I make that selection and then click over here, I can drag this up and you see how it doesn't actually increase the volume to the right of that selection. And within that selection, you can see it does this fade. So it's going to gradually go from full volume all the way to really quiet when it's under the interview. Now, another common editing technique for podcasting is fades. So that's where you increase the volume at the beginning of a particular audio track, and then you decrease it at the end. And so if I zoom out here and go back to our first track over here, let's say that I want this track to match up directly with this one. So I'm going to put them right under each other. And then once I'm done here, I actually want it to fade out. Maybe there's a cough, maybe there's a breath that I want to eliminate, but I don't want to cut off the word super sharply. I would just click on this upper right corner. You see this little box, and I would just drag it to the left. And you can see it makes a very nice fade. So that means it's going to go from full volume to nothing at the end of that fade. You can also do that when you're beginning a track. So if I go to the beginning of this one and drag this box, I can move it to the left, which is really nifty. Now, the other thing that's cool about Hindenburg is they make crossfades very easy. So let's say that you have a pop or something that interrupts the audio and you're trying to get rid of it. A very easy way to do that is with a crossfade. So if I undo those fades that I just made and I move this track up to here, if I click on the first track and drag this bottom right corner to the right, see how it overlaps with the second track? Once I release it, it will automatically create a crossfade, which means that the first portion of the audio gets softer as the second portion gets louder. So now that we've covered the basics, how to record in Hindenburg, how to import audio files, and how to do some basic editing techniques, now I want to show you how to master your audio in Hindenburg. So this is where you would take your audio recording and polish it to really improve your sound quality. Hindenburg has some really great effects you can apply to really sweeten your audio and make it sound more professional. And it also has the ability for you to bring in third-party plugins if there's a particular one that you like to use. You can apply that inside of Hindenburg as well. So let's say that I want to apply some effects to my interview track. All I would have to do is select the track and then click this button, which has the 3 lines and the 3 little dots. If you click on that, you can add up to 6 effects to this audio track. So if we click on the first box, immediately what pops up is the 5 effects that are built into Hindenburg and all the plugins that I have from Apple. So let me just real quick run through the Hindenburg effects and tell you what they do. So the equalizer is your EQ settings. You can apply this high pass filter right here, which automatically gets rid of everything basically under 100 hertz, which is great. You can increase or decrease your low, mid, and high frequencies. And you can easily turn it on and off, both from this pop-up and over here from the effects tab. You can just click on and off and that'll toggle it on and off. The other thing that you can do is you can add compression. So compression is great because it makes your sound more round, more warm, more inviting, and less harsh. So you do want to add a little bit of compression, but you don't want to overdo it. And if I hit play and I start listening back to this track, I can use this dial to increase or decrease the amount of compression. So this would be the maximum amount of compression, which is like a lot. And then up here in the meter, it tells you how much compression it's applying. So you typically don't want to go this far. You just want to go to like there, in between 3 dots and 5 dots is probably where you want to live. And then just like with the equalizer, you can turn this on and off, both from the pop-up and over here from the effects box. So let's X out of that. And then the next one we want to look at is noise reduction. So this is really great if, as you're listening to it, you're like, man, there's just this really weird background noise, or the fan is blowing and it's picking up in the microphone. You can isolate that noise and reduce it. So just like with the compressor, You can increase or decrease the amount of noise reduction that you do. And then Hindenburg is smart enough to be able to identify it and then reduce it for you. Now, the other things that you'll notice here, loudness meter and BBC meter, are simply meters to help you see what your audio levels look like. So this is a great kind of check to make sure that all your levels are good. But because Hindenburg is auto leveling your files when you import them, unless you do a ton of stuff to change the volume, this isn't actually that needed. But it's here for you just in case you do want it. So you'll more than likely have noise reduction turned on and the compressor turned on. And then if you have a very particular EQ setting that you want to apply, you can use the equalizer. But Hindenburg has something called a voice profiler, which basically takes all this stuff we just did and does it on command. So let's say that this particular interview, my voice just sounds incredible, and I always want to sound this way, no matter if I have a cold, no matter if I'm outside, if I'm inside, if I'm in my home studio, out in a cafe somewhere interviewing somebody, I always want my voice to sound just like this. If you click this caret and click on Learn Profile, Hindenburg will analyze that particular waveform and it will create an EQ map. So this is a map of my voice on this particular track. And from here, I can apply the high pass filter. Here, let's turn EQ on. I can apply the high pass filter. I can turn on compression. But here, what's really cool is, so let's say that I don't really want that high frequency in my voice. So I can drop this particular set of frequencies because I can see that I'm having a little bit here. And then in the future, Hindenburg will automatically make that adjustment. Pretty far out, right? If I really like how this particular voice profile sounds, I can save it as Travis's awesome voice. And then in the future, I would just click that caret and I would click Apply Profile. And it would pull up all the profiles that I've created. I would choose the one that I want and it would automatically apply all those EQ settings to that track. So once you dial this in one time, Hindenburg makes it extremely easy to make the rest of your podcast episodes sound incredible. So when I was talking about how Hindenburg takes all those pro level features that you get in a more expensive software and makes it really easy to use, this is what I'm talking about. Voice Profiler literally saves lives. Maybe not literally, but it could. It could absolutely save your life. When you're in a pinch at 11:59 p.m. trying to push out that episode, Hindenburg is really going to be helpful for you. So now I'm going to show you two ways to export your podcast episodes. One of them is going to be significantly faster as far as your workflow is concerned, and it'll work with Buzzsprout. The second way requires some extra steps, but it will work regardless of the podcast hosting platform that you use. And we'll actually start with that one, the one that'll work for everyone, and that's simply to use the export function. So here I've got a finished podcast episode loaded in Hindenburg, and I'm ready to export it. So when you're ready, you just click Export, and you'll get this pop-up window that gives you the ability to save your file. So let's go ahead and put it on my desktop. And then here you have the option of choosing your format. I like WAV, but MP3 is another very popular format that you can choose. So whichever one you like to export in, that's where you would choose that here. If you use a WAV, you have the option of encoding it as a mono or a stereo file. And then if you are encoding as an MP3 file, then you would use the high, low, and medium quality to determine your bit rate, which you can see changing here on the side. Now, Hindenburg does also give you some additional levers you can pull to really customize your export. So if you click on the Options button, that's where you'll see that. So since we have the MP3 format pulled up, we can, again, choose our encoding quality, which we'll just leave at high quality. You can choose joint stereo, or mono. I typically recommend exporting as a mono file unless you're using a lot of left and right pans where it actually matters that the left and the right side are different. And then this bit rate you can customize as well. But 192 or 96, if you're using a mono file, is totally fine. You can also adjust your sample rate, though I wouldn't recommend using this unless you're trying to sync your podcast audio with like a video element. So if your camera records in 48 kilohertz and your podcast audio is recorded in 44.1 kilohertz, which is not uncommon, then you can use that to actually change the sample rate of your audio so you don't have any syncing issues when you bring both of those together. But we're not going to worry about a conversion right now. And then your loudness setting is where you can set the overall loudness targets for your podcast episode. And this is really helpful because what you don't want to happen is to have one episode be too quiet, the next one be too loud, and then the third one actually be where you want it to be. You want them all to be the same volume all the way through. If you're exporting as a stereo file, you'll want to select -16 LUFS. That is the industry standard. It's a really safe bet for podcasting as well. And if you're using a mono file, I actually encourage you to select -18 LUFS. And that is because when you are listening to a mono audio file, it actually sounds a little bit louder than a stereo file. It's just something with the way that the signals interact with each other and with our brain. So if you are using a mono file, if you're exporting as a mono file rather, choose -18 LUFS. You can add chapters, add chapter markers if you like in here, but typically you would do that in your podcast host. And then if you really like this configuration and you want to use it every single time you do an export, you can save this particular set of settings and set it as the default. So every single time you export your file, it'll always use these settings. So click OK, and then I can hit save, and that would export my audio file. Now, if you host your podcast with Buzzsprout, I'm going to show you a faster way to do all of that stuff that we just talked about, because Hindenburg directly integrates with Buzzsprout. So you can go directly from Hindenburg and upload your audio to your Buzzsprout account, and then just add your episode description and your show notes and those kind of things in there. So it's a really cool feature. It will really save you a lot of time in the long run. So if we're going to do that, instead of choosing export, we're actually going to choose publish, and that'll show you this screen here. So you can see I've already set up one of these integrations, but we're going to set up one from scratch. So if you're doing this for the first time, you'd go down here and select the plus icon. So that will pop up this screen where you would choose your publish target. So we're going to choose Buzzsprout because that's the host that we're going to be uploading to. And then for the name, you want this to not be the name of this particular episode, but the name of this kind of preset that we're setting up. So you can see the other one that I have is how to start a podcast. And that's because I have specifically tailored my export settings for that podcast. And so for this one, this is a Buzzcast episode. So we're actually going to type Buzzcast here. And then we're going to click next. So here's where we're going to take all those options and settings that we set up when we were exporting, and we're going to set them up once. And then this is going to save as the default configuration. So I really like WAV files, mono file encoding, because again, we don't really do a lot of differences in the left and the right pan. For the loudness, we're going to set it at -18 LUFS, so all of our podcast episodes are the same volume. And then here's where you're going to give Hindenburg the information that it needs to directly upload your podcast episodes into your Buzzsprout account. So you'll need two things, your API token and your podcast ID. Now let me switch over to my web browser and I'll show you where to find those things in Buzzsprout. So here I have Buzzcast pulled up on my computer. And so to find your API token and your profile ID, you're going to go to My Profile up in the top right corner. And then under these tabs, you're going to select API. So this gives you your API credentials that you're going to give to Hindenburg. So the first one is your API token. So you just double click on that and you can copy it to your clipboard. And then if I go back to Hindenburg, I would paste it here under API token. And then for your podcast ID, we're going to go back to that page. And then here you'll see your podcast title. And then this is the podcast ID that you want to put in Hindenburg. So we're going to copy that, go back to Hindenburg, and then paste that here in podcast ID. Once you've done that, you just click next and then hit finish. So now Buzzcast is ready to rock and roll in Hindenburg. So anytime I'm editing a podcast episode in Hindenburg that's for Buzzcast, when I'm ready to export it, I would just go to publish, choose this podcast, and then hit publish. That's it. That's as easy as it is. You literally finish editing your episode, you click the publish button, and then you select the podcast you want to publish it to. That's all you got to do. And then you hit publish. And so Hindenburg is now exporting out, rendering out the audio file, and then they will upload it directly to our Buzzsprout dashboard. So once Hindenburg has finished uploading your podcast episode, it'll say done, upload completed, and you can just close out of this. And then if we go over to our Buzzsprout dashboard, and go to episodes, you will see that Buzzsprout indeed has received your audio file. So once it's finished processing, then you can go in, you can update the title, you can add show notes, do chapter markers, transcripts, and schedule your episode. So publishing your episode from Hindenburg into Buzzsprout leaves it unpublished, so you don't have to worry about it going out before it's ready. So that's how easy it is to go directly from editing your podcast episode in Hindenburg to uploading your final episode to Buzzsprout. So if you're looking for a pro-level audio editing software that balances ease of use with all the features that you could need, Hindenburg Journalist is a fantastic choice for your podcast production. If you want to try Hindenburg for free, you can get a 30-day free trial directly from their website, hindenburg.com. Or if you're a Buzzsprout podcaster and you host your podcast with us, if you go to the resources tab in your dashboard, we have a coupon code for a 90-day free trial. So you can really put it through its paces before you decide to invest in it long term. And if you're an independent podcaster that's always on the lookout for new resources, definitely subscribe to the Buzzsprout YouTube channel. Every single week, we put out new gear review videos, new strategy videos, and software tutorials like this one. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, keep podcasting.